This is Discovering the Scripture with Dr. Peter John. Currently, we are in the book of Obadiah, John Gill's exposition of the entire Bible. He's basically explaining all the difficulties that he can. Introduction to Obadiah. Now, I want to let you know there are going to be a lot of names in here that I cannot pronounce. So what I will do is I will spell them if I think I have them wrong at all, and if I think it might be difficult. Introduction to Obadiah. The title of this book in the Hebrew copies is usually S-E-P-H-E-R, Obadiah. The book of Obadiah, the Vulgate Latin version calls it the prophecy of Obadiah, and so the Arabic version, and in the Syriac version, it is the prophecy of the prophet Obadiah. His name signifies a servant or worshiper of the Lord. Who he was, what his parentage, and in what age he lived are things uncertain. The Seder Alaman Zutu, that is Sederolamzuta, places him in the reign of Jehoshaphat, and is thought by some to be that Obadiah that was one of the princes he sent to teach the people. 2 Corinthians chapter 17, verse 7. The ancient Jewish rabbins take him to be the same with him that lived in the times of Ahab and in his court, who hid the prophets by 50 in a cave and fed them. 1 King 18, verse 3. To which Aben Ezra objects, because he is not called a prophet, only one that feared the Lord, whereas to be a prophet is something greater. They also say he was an Edomite by birth, but was proselyte to the Jewish religion, and so a fit person to be employed in prophesying against Edom. And it is a tradition with them that his widow is a woman whose cruse of oil Elisha multiplied. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 1. Some have been of the opinion that he was the captain of 35, whose life Elijah spared in the times of Ahaziah, and who upon that left the king's service and followed the prophet and became a disciple of his. So, pseudo hyphen capital Epiphanis and Isidorus Hispalenus, that's Isidorus Hispalensis, who say that he was a Sychem, that's Sychem, a city of Samaria and of the field of Beth Chamar, that's Bethachamar, or Bethacccaron. Others would have him to be one of the overseers of the workmen in the house of the Lord in the times of Joash. 2 Chronicles chapter 34, verse 12. To which Mr. Lively inclines, though others, going according to the order of the books in the canon of Scripture, which is not to be depended on, placed him earlier, and make him contemporary with Hosea, Joel, and Amos, as Gratos, Hutius, and Lightfoot. But he seems rather to be contemporary with Jeremiah and Ezekiel, with whose prophecies this agrees, as may be observed by comparing it with Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 1, to have lived and prophesied after the destruction of Jerusalem by the Chaldeans, in which the Edomites against whom he prophesied had a concern. See Obadiah chapter 1, verse 11. Though Dr. Lightfoot thinks these prophecies rather either to sacking of Jerusalem by Shishak, king of Egypt, 1 King 14:25, or by the Palestinians and Arabians, 2 Chronicles 21, verse 16, or by Joash, king of Israel, 2 Chronicles 25, verse 21. So that upon the whole it is not certain. And as Aben Ezra and Kimchi that's Kimchi, it is not known in what age this prophet lived. Bishop Ussher places his prophecy in the 12th year of JECONIAH captivity. Footnote from the reader. I want to stress that this reading is primarily done for the blind. So I'm trying to give them at least the spelling, if I cannot pronounce it, so they can hear and have more enlightenment. End of the footnote. However, there is no doubt to be made of the authenticity of the prophecy, as may be concluded not only from the title of it and the solemn manner in which it begins, but from the manner of it and the accomplishment of what is contained in it, as well as from the testimony borne to it in the New Testament, in which not only the book of the minor prophets, in which this stands, is quoted, Acts chapter 7, verse 42, but a passage in it, Obadiah 1:8, is referred to in 1 Corinthians 1:19, as it is thought by some learned men. I have only to observe that according to pseudo-EPIPHANIUS, he died in Beth Chamar, where he is said to be born, and was buried in the sepulchre of his ancestors. But according to Jerome, that's Jerom, and Isidore, that's Isidore, his scepter is in Sebaste, that's Sebaste, or Samaria, which remained to the times of Jerome, that's Jerom, near those of the prophet Elisha and John the Baptist. Monsignor, Thevenot, says that John the Baptist here lies buried between the prophets Elisha and Abdis, that's Abdias. Now that ends the introduction to the book. Now this is the introduction to Obadiah 1. This prophecy of Obadiah is the least of the minor prophets, consisting but of one chapter. The subject of it is Edom, whose destruction is foretold, and is to be considered as a type of enemies of Christ and his kingdom, and especially of the Roman Antichrist. After the prefix and rumor of war and preparation for it, which would issue in the ruin of Edom, are observed, Obadiah 1:1, because of the pride, confidency, and security, Obadiah 1:3, which should be complete and entire, Obadiah 1:5, notwithstanding their allies who would deceive them, and the wisdom of their wise men, which should be destroyed, and the strength of their mighty men, who would be dismayed, Obadiah 1:7, and this should come upon them, chiefly because of their ill usage of the Jews at the time of Jerusalem's destruction, which is enlarged upon, Obadiah 1:10, and this would be when all the nations round about them would be destroyed, Obadiah 1:15, and when deliverance is promised to the Jews, who should not only enjoy their own possessions, but the land of the Edomites, wasted by them, Obadiah 1:17, and the book is concluded with a glorious prophecy of the kingdom of the Messiah, Obadiah 1:21. End of the introduction of Obadiah, the book of, end of the introduction of the first and only chapter of Obadiah, from John Gill's Exposition of the entire Bible, brought to you by Discovering the Scriptures, being read by Dr. Peter John. Remember, these are recordings done primarily for the blind, so if I cannot pronounce it exact, I will spell it out so that they have the knowledge that you and I, who can read, can get ourselves. Thank you, and have a blessed day.